Salute. In the last two videos, we talked about the Roman or the Latin alphabet and the history behind the different pronunciations of the language. In this video, we're going to start talking about the pronunciation itself, and in particular, the pronunciation of vowel sounds.
There are 6 vowels in Latin. They're the same vowels we use in English, including Y, but some of the sounds are a little different. The first Latin vowel is the vowel A. The long A sound in Latin sounds like the A in the English word father. You can hear the same sound in the Latin word for fate, which is fatum.
And these two words, and really the English word is just a derivative of the Latin word, but these two words very well illustrate the difference between the way the long A sounds in English and the way the long A sounds in Latin. In English, it has the sound A, as in our word fate, whereas in Latin, the long A sound is pronounced ah, and we can hear it in the word fatum.
The short A is a less distinct sound. It's more like the first syllable in our word amaze. And so the Latin word for father, which has a short A, is pater. The next vowel in Latin is the vowel E, which the long E actually sounds more like our long A sound, as in the word play.
The play's the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king.
So the Latin word for an oar, like you row a ship with, is spelled R, long E, M-U-S, and is pronounced remus. The short E sounds more like the E sound in our word bet, or maybe in pet. We can hear this sound in the Latin word petto, which means I seek, I go after, I head for, or if we're a dog, I fetch. Another vowel that doesn't sound quite the same in Latin as it does in English is the vowel I. The long I, for instance, in classical Latin, sounds more like our long E, for instance, in our word squeak. So this Latin word, spelled D-I-C-O, is pronounced dico, which means I say.
I say.
The short I in Latin is pronounced the same way as the English I in a word like sit. And in fact, there's a word in Latin spelled and pronounced the same way, sit. Only in Latin it means let it be.
Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be.
Next we come to the vowel O, which actually sounds pretty much the way it does in English. The long O sound, for instance, is the same as in the English word toe. So the word for Rome, R long O M A in Latin, is pronounced Roma. The short O is like our O in a word like not. So for instance, the Latin word for trick or deceit, a trick of some sort, is spelled D-O-L-U-S and pronounced dolus. U is another vowel that sounds very much the same in Latin as it does in English. The long U sound sounds much like the long U in our English word blue. We can hear this in the Latin word unus. By the way, notice it does not have a y in front of it, as the long U sometimes does in English when it starts a word. The short U sound sounds like the short U in the English word put. For instance, in the Latin word sum, which means I am. Speaking of the Y sound, the letter Y is used only rarely in Latin, and in Latin, unlike English, only as a vowel. Whether long or short, its sound falls somewhere between the long U sound we heard in unus and the short I in sit. The word for pyramid, then, is pronounced pyramis.
Sometimes two different vowels combine to form one sound. These combinations are called diphthongs. There are 6 diphthongs in Latin: AE, AU, EI, EU, OE, and UI.
The diphthong AE makes the sound I, like the eyes we see through. We can hear this in the Latin word for often, saepe. The diphthong AU is pronounced ow, like the English interjection we make when we've hurt ourselves. The Latin word for bold, then, is pronounced audax. The Latin diphthong EI sounds like the same vowel combination in the English word reign, as in a king's reign. So the Latin word that means next, D-E-I-N-D-E, is pronounced dende. The vowel combination EU is not, strictly speaking, a diphthong, since it makes more than one sound. It's pronounced eu, as if you took just the vowel sounds from the phrase, hey you.
Hey you.
We can hear this sound in Latin words like the word Europa, the Latin word for Europe. The combination OE is pronounced oi. We see this in the Latin word for battle, P-R-O-E-L-I-U-M, which is pronounced proilium. Finally, UI, which is pronounced we.
And it's we.
Kind of like the sound we make when we're going down the roller coaster. So the word that means to this, H-U-I-C, is pronounced huic. That sums up the main differences between the pronunciation of vowels in English and in Classical Latin. In the next video, we'll take a look at consonant sounds in Classical Latin.